Hey everybody, I'm Jake Valancourt. I'm a co-founder of 10X Engineered Materials.
And I'm Jacob Magner. I run both the powder coating group on Facebook as well as my own company, Encrypted Coatings, here in Jackson, Michigan.
So today we want to talk to you about a couple things. One of them is going to be, Jake and I have been producing some content recently to help people who are newer in the business think through some problems. So we wanted to actually cover common problems when people first get into the industry. So, one of them would be like
some of the initial defects.
Yeah. So orange peel, undercuring, overcuring, fish eyes, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
and material like embedment. So, if you get something that looks not like a fisheye, but maybe looks like there's something underneath the material, and you're just adamant that there was nothing there, well, we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, so one of the problems that we've run into before is actually abrasive embedment when people are using too coarse of an abrasive, or sometimes an abrasive with a lot of contamination in it. One I see a lot is people seem to think that if you have a coarse crushed glass, it's clean because it's clear. And what we end up getting is quite a bit of embedment that's coming through. What do you find?
Well, so, there's obviously a lot of different materials and a lot of different things that can be hit at something. And I've always found typically that the harder materials tend to embed if whatever your substrate is that you're blasting is not as hard. You build that material into it. And but then again, there's definitely other science there. I'm sure that I don't know, Jake, but there's a lot of materials there and a lot of different medias I've used, and a lot just like to embed in, especially in aluminum.
Oh yeah, aluminum's tough. I've even seen Inconel have embedment issues with some of the harder abrasives out there too. It's not an issue with the 10X materials, but it's something that I've seen people struggle with where they're not understanding that that's actually what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's one of the easy fix. What about orange peel? I see a lot of people complaining about that.
Yep. There's a few different things that can cause orange peel, from your substrate preparation to over spraying on a part, or having too much buildup or not enough. But yeah, those are the two main things, or three main things that cause that defect.
What's a good sign to know when you're overcuring your powder?
Discoloration definitely can be a big factor of overcuring powder, as well as performance of the material. That's huge. Performance of the material can really be degraded if you overcure it.
And what about undercuring?
The first thing that you'll know, and this is something that pops up in the group all the time, is, hey, why is my clear coat cracking? Or why is my powder coat cracking before it's even shipped out the door? That's a big telltale sign. And then the other one that's not as apparent is 6 months down the road or 2 months down the road, it just does not perform like it should. I have actually a lot of customers who've had bad experience with powder just because it wasn't properly applied. There is chemicals, which that's probably for a whole nother video, but there's chemicals you can use to actually make sure or ensure that the powder is fully cured. But I think just following a recipe that the supplier, the manufacturer of the powder has is step one.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, even if you're working with virgin steel or metal in general, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're jumping to the conclusion that I don't need to blast this. Right, I see people who don't blast things and they get really poor quality, and I also see people who don't outgas, and they're wondering why they're having these issues. And it's like, why are you skipping these? Like, there are processes that should be followed, and if you're skipping steps that are generally recommended by the powder manufacturers, you're going to have wacky results. So kind of read the friendly manual, right?
Yeah, honestly, a huge thing is following your process. So making that substrate as clean and having it at the right profile for that powder to have its strongest chance to survive. If you're starting a business and you don't already have that in your head, like, hey, this has to be this way every time we process it, then you might as well just quit now, because you're not gonna have success. You're gonna have customers that down the road are complaining, and then it's bad. It's bad business.
Yep.
Got to follow the steps.
So a lot of folks struggle with poor adhesion or powder not adhering. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Powder not adhering. So there's two different ways of looking at this. You can look at it from a custom side or an industrial side. Industrial suppliers will have specifications that require certain tests, which I think is a whole nother video, but there's certain tests that have to be performed for acceptance, as well as the other side, the custom side, where there is not so much tests, but real life performance and feedback from your customers. And to talk about what can prevent poor adhesion, I think that all comes back down to the substrate. If you have a proper profile, it cannot be too smooth. If it's too smooth, that's what's going to cause your adhesion issues. The powder has to have something on a molecular level to grab to. If it doesn't, then it's just not going to survive. It's going to flake off or chip off, or it just won't perform over time. And then the other thing is pinholes. So pinholes can be caused from media embedding itself into your substrate, which then leaves almost just like a little dot in your nice clean surface that you really wouldn't even be able to tell, especially if your media is a very similar color to the substrate. So then when you go to coat it, if you don't, even using stuff like denatured alcohol or acetone or anything to clean that part off, it's not going to help, because it's actually in the substrate. You go to coat that, and you get these little dots, and they look like little raised up dots, and you try and sand them down, and you sand them, and it still doesn't look right. So that can definitely be from poor media. I mean, just some sands do that.
So if you want to learn more, reach out to 10x at 10xem.com, or we also encourage you to get involved in the powder coating group. Jacob Magner's been running that for a long time, and it's a great community. We're involved. A lot of other manufacturers and vendors are also involved. Yep.